Hi there, welcome to a series of videos called English for Emerson. On this channel we learn basic English reading and writing, and lately we've been doing folk sayings. What does that mean? I'll put it up here. Folk sayings. We've been working on sayings that come from the past, and therefore, wisdom, maybe I'll put that up here too. Wisdom is knowledge that comes through experience, that comes with time. Like old people, a lot of times are not very smart in terms of figuring out how to do stuff. For example, I got this job at this restaurant, and the whole system at the restaurant is run on this new computer system. It's called a point of sale. Oh my gosh, it's confusing. I have such a heck of a time trying to figure out how to do anything on this computer. Whereas the young girls who work there, the waitresses, shoot, they just fly on this thing. Their fingers move so fast. I can't do it nearly as fast as them. But even though I'm not very good at that kind of stuff, I have knowledge that's different than theirs. My knowledge is based on some life experience. I've lived a lot longer. I've lived twice as long as them. That's a different kind of intelligence. It's called wisdom. It comes with time. Well, neither one's better than the other. It's just that's one of the advantages of having lived for a while is you start to get some wisdom. Whereas when you're young, your brain is just it works better. It works more. It's just like your muscles when you're younger. They're stronger. Well, your brain is stronger when you're younger. That's just a fact. That's one of the advantages of being young. One of the advantages of being old is you have more experience. Well, there's another thing about time that's very, very, very powerful. Very powerful. That's what we're going to learn about today. Here we go. You got yourself something to write with, I hope, and you got something to write on. We're going to start off. The first word's going to be time. How do you spell that? How would you start the word time? Time. Time. I hope you're thinking about a T. That's how I'm going to start my time with the T. Straight line down. Then from the left to the right across the top for a capital T. That's not very straight. Mine's kind of going downhill. Oh well. Free channel. Here we go. Next letter. I. M. Now you'd think that would spell time if you just thought about it logically, because that's an I, T-I-M. You'd think that'd be time, but in fact that spells Tim. In order to turn that I from an I into an I sound, you got to put a silent E on the end of it. Isn't that weird? It turns a I into an I to put a silent E here. Now, that does not spell tiny. That spells time. How do we know that E is going to be silent? I talk about this in almost every lesson. This is a vowel. A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y, I'm going to put them up here, are vowels. If you have an I, if you have a vowel in a word before an E, and that E is the last, it comes at the end, then the E is going to be silent. The E at the end of the word is always silent if another vowel comes before it. Okay? So that's going to spell time, not timey. Time. Okay? Time is I-S. You might think it would be I-Z because it has a Z sound at the end, but we've learned that in English, when you have a Z sound at the end of a word, it's usually, not always, but usually made with an S. That's just the way it is. Time is well, that's an easy word. Wonderful Starts with a W. Can you hear the W in wonderful? Wonderful. I can hear it. W-O-N. A hill and down. Wonder. Can you hear the D next? I hear it. Wonderful. Wonderful. Starts with a lowercase c, then connected. Down. Wonder. Wonderful. That's a great word. I love the word wonderful. I try to use it a lot. Life is wonderful. What does wonderful mean? That's another way of saying excellent or good or great. But it's different than that a little bit. It's a little bit different than excellent or good or great. When something's wonderful, it means it's a little bit mysterious too. You don't quite know how to explain. It's something that's a little bit beyond. How do I explain? It's a little bit mysterious. It's a little bit unknowable. Wonderful. It's something you just can't quite explain. It's better than in some ways than good or excellent or great. It's a little bit mysterious. Time is a wonderful healer. That's the next word. H-E-A-L. Heal. Like if you get a cut, a scrape on your arm. Over time, it heals. It comes back and the skin covers it over again. It heals. Time is a wonderful healer. E-R. There. That's some folk wisdom right there. I don't mind telling you. This is something that you learn with time. You ask any old person, and this is something this is some folk wisdom right here. Time is a wonderful healer. Well, this of course is wisdom, because how would you know that time was a wonderful healer unless you'd lived for a long time? Well, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. And this is an important lesson for all my students out there who are young. Emerson, you need to listen to this and take it to heart. This is something you don't know when you're young because you haven't lived for very long. But as you live for a longer time, this is something that you learn, is that time is a wonderful healer. When you're young, it's like, things happen in life that hurt. Big time. Big time. But you find out as you live for a while that time heals. It really, really does. That's the truth. That's the truth. I've had some big losses over the last few years. Tough times. One of the things that's happened, of course, was Grandpa Chuck passing away. That was very difficult for me. And time has been a wonderful healer. Now, when you go through things that are very, very difficult, experts on this know that there's certain stages that a person goes through of healing. And the first stage for most people is shock. You don't quite know. Everybody responds to shock differently. A shock is like a surprise. When something happens, we tend to go through a time of shock. I'll put that up here, shock. It doesn't quite sink in. And everybody reacts differently. Then you go through something called grieving. What does that mean? Grieving is a little bit different than sadness. Sadness, you know what that's like when you feel sad about something, you kind of cry a little bit. Grieving is different. Grieving is when you have a real loss. And it takes, you kind of go through a process of actually, it's a long period of sadness when you go through a grieving process. You really lose something. It's a gradual process of letting go and being sad about it. And then you get to a stage called acceptance. And it takes a long time, but time is a wonderful healer. You gradually accept things and you move on. When I was driving out here to South Dakota from Oregon, I was passing through the desert. And I got into a desert that was all just white sand for a while. There was hardly anything out there. And I noticed that there was a bunch of black rocks out there in the desert. It was white sand and black rocks. And people had gotten and pulled their cars off of the side of the road, and they had written messages in the sand with these black rocks. They'd lined them up. And they'd written things in the sand. So that as you drive by, you just see things that were written out in the dirt. People had piled up rocks and made letters and written messages out in the sand. I saw that. I thought, you know what? I'm pulling over when I can, where I can do it safely. I'm going to get away from the road. I don't want anybody else to see what I write. And I'm going to write a message in the sand. I felt like I had to write something. And so I wrote something in the sand. It was, "Hi, Dad." It was nice. I lined up the rocks and made the letters. I'll put the picture up of it. And I cried. And it was part of the healing process. I grieved, and it just was nice. It felt good. It still feels good to have done that. And it's just one of those things. You go through things, and by doing certain things, little rituals like this, whatever, people find a way to healing. And they move forward with their life. What I'm trying to say is that when I was young and something bad happened, I thought, oh my gosh, it's like, this is so awful. I don't even know how to process it. I don't know how to move forward. One of the things I've learned with time is that time will take care of it. If you just let time work, time will heal it itself. You don't have to really do anything. Time will heal. That's a little bit of folk wisdom today, and that's all I got for you today on English for Emerson. As things happen in life, you know what? My advice is on sometimes is just let time take care of it. That's the best way. And that's all I got to say today on English for Emerson. I hope you appreciated this little bit of folk wisdom. Okay, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.